Oh, show transform controls. Derp. Okay, show transform controls. That's what I was missing, that little checkbox there. I thought it would be in the more major settings. I didn't give myself enough room. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry about that. Now we're really going. Okay, so rotate that 90, well, so it looks like it's 90 degrees. I'm going to go ahead and save this while my hard drive speeds up. We're going to throw this into this folder here. Lightsaber ref, good enough for me. Boom. Cinema. Okay, we're in cinema. We need to go to a side view, and we did all this so that we can get nice, accurate scale reference, just kind of in general. So I click my middle mouse button. We go to, let's say, the right side of this. I'm going to click on the viewport so it knows we're focused on that. And now we hit Alt-V. And when you hit Alt-V, it's going to pop open your viewport settings. And now we can go to back. And I guess now I have to do it here. So when I click back, you see it's all grayed out. We have to kind of say, which window are we looking at? Well, we're looking at this window. And as soon as we do that, we can put an image in here. We go find the image. We should be able to grab that right there. There's our lightsaber reference. Pops in really nicely there. I'm going to gray it out a little so the white's not quite so blinding. It seems to be fair. Well, let's just see what happens. So there's our lightsaber. So now we get to decide how we want to do a lot of this modeling. There's a lot of different techniques we might be able to tackle on here. We could probably do one giant loft. We could probably just do a series of extrudes. We could do cloner stuff for these bits. Honestly, I guess it depends on the part. I feel like we should actually probably use... let's keep it simple. Let's even maybe tackle different bits in different ways. So I'm going to go ahead and create a cylinder, and let's move it up here to the top, and we'll start there. So I'm going to hit T for scale and shrink that guy down a little. We're going to make this guy really skinny. And let's increase our radius to a reasonable amount. So there we go. Let's go to our 3D view. I want to make sure that we're working with a good poly count here. This is a pretty good amount around, but we're not going to be able to subdivide this very well. So I'm actually going to increase this to 46, which is just kind of a go-to where it's a little more detailed, but it's not a crazy amount of polygons. And let's go ahead and make this guy editable, and I'm immediately going to select all my points, right-click, and say Optimize to weld everything together. So now I've done that, I can just grab this top ring, and I'm going to go to my side view again, and let's get our middle extrusion going. So I'm going to hit I for inner extrude, and I'm going to start pulling in. Are we really tiny? Is it just hard to see at this angle? And actually, it's going to be really hard to see at this angle. So I'm going to do an inner extrude, which is going to be to some degree we can't even see, but it is just a little bit. And I'm going to hit D for extrude, and I'm going to pull it up. So cool. Now I get to pull it up, and you'll see I'm trying to split the curve here because we're at this perspective. I'm trying to put this right at the halfway point between the two. Anyway, now I've done that. I'm going to grow my selection, which is a UI, and I'm going to hit T for scale, and I'm going to say don't scale on Y, and now I can scale down until I match that size right there. Just a way of not having to change this perspective. I do have to change the perspective now to do a similar thing down here, which is just going to be, I'm going to do the same thing, but we can actually see it. I'm going to do that extrusion like that, grow my selection, and now we can go into this point of view, hit T for scale, and I can just scale this until I'm matching this next curve. UK to shrink, and I'm just grabbing the bottom of it. Once again, I'm splitting the difference of this rotation top and bottom. Another inner extrude, another D, pull it down right in between those two, grow the selection, hit T, and now you see, using that technique, I can kind of very quickly make those changes. UK, I, inner extrude, D for extrude, pull it out, midpoint, grow the selection, T for scale, scale it down. So, you know, kind of once we had the settings that we wanted, that was very quick to make those changes. I actually didn't do the loop very well on this one, so I'm going to hit UL for loop, grab that loop, grow the selection, hit E, and then start pulling that down until that's at the midpoint. And now that should be a little bit better. So in perspective, you know, hopefully we're kind of matching our perspective pretty well there. So that was a really quick way of modeling that top part. This next part's actually going to be nearly identical, but it's a different color, and we could use our set selection to texture different parts different ways, but I kind of want to just have it be a separate object, so I'm actually going to just rename this top, I'm going to copy and paste it, I'm going to grab this bottom one, and actually I'm going to do a loop selection here, hit UF for fill, UF, select every polygon except for this bottommost row, So you see I still have that one. And now I can kind of continue modeling as a separate model entirely there. So I can hit D for extrude and pull that down. Halfway point right there. Grow my selection, T, scale. So it's the same idea. Halfway point. Actually, I did that one wrong. I need to do I for inner extrude, but I'm going to pull out. D for extrude. Oop, I hit S instead, and that zoomed in. D, extrude down, grow my selection, hit T, scale it out perfectly. Very quick. I'm going to split this polygon off. Actually, that's what I should have done. Here's a cool trick. Let's top one, top two. If I hit UP, and you'll see here if I do my shortcut, UP is, I don't even know the name, split. So I'm going to do a split command on this. So by doing a split command, it actually takes a duplicate of the polygons I currently have selected, and it splits it off into a new object. But it left my original one here, and I actually have the original one still selected. But if I select this new one, you see I just have these bottom polygons, which means I can select them all, hit T for scale, scale them out, hit the letter D for extrude. Now, I'm going to be missing this little bit right there, this hole if I do an extrude. Let me show you what I mean. If I hit D right now and extrude down, you'll see that it's actually hollow. This middle one's technically hollow, but it doesn't matter because we never see that. But this one we would see. So now when I hit D for extrude, I'm going to turn on create caps, which is going to leave those there, and I can pull this down, and that's fine. We're going to have to remember to turn those off, which is always a very, very important and dangerous aspect of this. But I'm going to hit I for inner extrude, and then hit D, and then make sure I turn off create caps. You can really screw up your model if you do that. So more of the same. Scale that down. I guess that was silver, so this should be another separate object. So I'm going to hit UP again. Grab this one. Oh, I didn't have any poly selected. Grow. Okay, cool. So I've got these polys selected. I'm going to hit delete that. Grab these polys, hit UP to split it, grab the copy, select all those, do a inner extrude to pull these in, hit D to pull down. Looks like I selected multiple polygons, so I messed something up there. You see I actually grabbed multiple rings here. I can get rid of those by grabbing this inner ring and scaling, I guess, to 0. That's a little dangerous, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to say 0, 0. You see I actually scaled the whole guy down to 0, and I'm going to hit optimize to kind of flatten that down again. I can select everything and do my I for inner extrude, pull these in, and hit D for regular extrude. I guess this part should have been part of that object, and this is where perhaps leaving it all one object and doing selection tags might have helped there. But we're about to end this part of it. Let's just get this last little piece here, and then we'll tackle everything else with a different technique. So I'm going to do that. Shrink my selection, inner extrude, pull it in, hit D for extrude, pull it out. Grow it one last time, T for scale. There we go. So now we've made these top bits. We can kind of keep it a little bit organized, renaming them a little bit. Okay, now we're going to make this part. This part, a lot of potential ways we could tackle that. The best way is probably going to be with a cloner. So yeah, let's do that. I'm going to create a new cylinder. So you see I got a nice little cylinder here. I'm just going to go ahead and center it on one of these. Actually, if we start going here, we're almost in the exact center of our object. Let me check the chat, make sure everything's going well. Everybody seems to be, yeah, okay, everybody seems happy and everything seems to be working. Sorry, on my screen it looked like it might have kind of dropped. But back here, you see, based on perspective, this one's actually quite flat, so it actually works really well for us. Like our perspective is less and less of a problem as we get to the center of this object, just based on the perspective. So I'm going to shrink this guy down until it's right in between the size you see of there and there, right at the halfway point. And now, let's give it a couple heights. I was going to bevel it, but I don't think these bevels are not 45, and the normal bevel would give us a bevel of 45 degrees. So you see I went and I gave us height segment of 3. What that means is I can make this editable. I'm also going to pull it down, make it editable. I'm immediately going to select all my points and say optimize, so now everything is welded. And now I'm going to actually grab that loop. I'm going to grow my selection, UI, and then invert UI, and now I've got the top and bottom selected, and now you can see I can cleanly scale these in and out. Learning the shortcuts for doing these selections is incredibly I guess not. It's not important, but it can. You can see hopefully like my workflow. I start thinking about how I'm scaling these things and selecting these things, and it actually makes it incredibly quick to start doing these more dynamic selections. And so when you kind of add all those things into your arsenal of ways of grabbing and selecting and changing, it can really dramatically improve your overall workflow. So it looks like my scale is a little off, or at least there's some width here. So I'm going to increase my selection. I'm going to invert my selection, U, I. And now I can hit T for scale. I'm actually going to grab it physically on Y and make it a little taller because I have it deselected up here. I get normal T and scale on the outside right there, which should make it to proper size. And that's actually working incredibly well right there. You'll see that my height is 19.2. I'm actually going to copy that value. I'm going to copy it because I'm going to go to a cloner. I'm going to throw this guy into the cloner. I'm going to pull the cloner down just so it's in the proper spot. It's already set to a linear movement. It's actually already on Y. It just needs a proper amount. And the proper amount is 19.2. So now you see it's going to be cloning, and these are all going to be matching perfectly where they match. So that's great. Pull this whole guy down, set it up right there. And now we can make the however many number of these as we need. Pretty good. Looks like our scale's just a tiny bit off. So we can't increase this number because everything would start splitting apart. But I can just hit T for scale and scale this whole thing up uniformly. And it should keep everything matching. Actually, I'm in polygon mode. I'm not sure if that affects it. Yeah, interesting. Oh, wait, I have to turn my Y on. Okay, now that Y is turned on, I can scale this whole thing up. And now you see that's matching pretty well. Okay, cool. Quite happy with that. I guess the only thing we'd need is we're going to have this hole. And oh, no, we don't have a hole on the top because I didn't delete those. I was thinking I might delete those so those could all get welded together, but it's not a terribly important detail. I'm actually going to select our Fong tag on that. I'm going to set it to 22, which is going to make this nice and round, but not, but we'll get rid of that. We get these hard edges back is what I'm trying to say. Okay, excellent. Up, down. Okay, so this part looks pretty straightforward. I'm not sure if there's damage there or just a stripe or if there's any difference. I'm just going to treat that as a single cylinder. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to copy a one extra of this cylinder. I'm going to move it down, and that's going to become that part right there. So that actually works pretty well. Create a new cylinder at its default size. It's actually going to be incredibly similar to what we need. Actually, almost spot on. T for scale the whole thing up a little bit, and I can just shrink my radius. Actually, I should do that the opposite. I mean, it's always a million little tiny things that I like to do here to save time. So, like, right now, we could go over here, and I know I'm super slowing this down by kind of explaining it out, but you see how, like, it was like this. So it needs to be a little taller, and it needs to be a little skinnier. So what you see that from this particular angle, we have this one orange dot. And if I click that, you can see we actually control the height. So what does that mean if we want to do this shape as fast as we can? Well, I would hit T for scale, and we have it down all of the different axes. And now I can scale it to be the correct width because that's the setting that we don't have clean, quick access to. And now I've done that, I can grab this dot and drag it to the proper spot. That's a lot quicker than the alternative, which would be let's scale it to the height that we want. And now I don't have the parameter I want to visually grab. So now we have to click on here. We have to go to the radius. We have to start ticking that down until I get to the proper size. That took a lot longer than it would take to visually scale and then grab the dot. Now, if we were at this other side view, we actually would have had the dot on that one. So that would have changed the way I model it based on the context we were currently in. Cool. Okay, we just got this last part. You know, I'm just going to copy the cylinder. So here, you know, like up here, we were doing this really, hopefully, kind of clean modeling. But down here, you know, I'm just going to copy the cylinder and make a duplicate of it down here. Actually, I'm going to hit T for scale and do that scaling thing again. You'll see that my lightsaber is actually a little off to the side. I've just been ignoring it, but just make note of that. You know, so now I scale that down. This is intersecting straight through the object, but we won't see it. So, like along those lines, depending on how clean and carefully you're doing this stuff, like that could be perfectly acceptable. Like that, that's not gonna bother me after I'm done. But if I'm trying to model super duper clean, that might bother me. So just something to keep in mind. So now here's where things get a little bit fancier. So that's all really straightforward. You know, we could have done this with a lathe. We could have done this with a loft. We already did with modeling and cloning and just straight up cylinders. So there's already quite a few different techniques in there. But now we can't fake this bottom part too much. Let's take a look at it from this point of view. It's actually kind of hard to tell exactly what that shape is. It makes it kind of interesting. I'd love to get a little bit of a zoom up on that. I'm going to go back to our image search, and I'm going to click on search tools, and I'm going to say size large, and now it's only showing us large images here. And what I'd love to do is zoom up on, I mean, I don't want to look at somebody else's render. This one looks pretty good. There we go. Okay, I like this. So this one's very detailed. Now clear, it's very messed up. I don't know that we're going to do that, but we can see what we've got going on here a lot more cleanly. And that's why I did this. I wanted to see what we were dealing with here. So this looks like it's aluminum. This looks like it's like this is all machined out. I'm trying to imagine Luke Skywalker behind like a little metal lathe, like cutting all of it out, but he must have done that. But what this looks like as a general rule is very similar to this shape that we were working from. Just a little bigger. So that seems like a good way to start. Why don't we go ahead and steal another copy of that, which is this one, actually. Let's put these guys back in order. Grab a duplicate of this guy. Let's pull it down and start dealing with it here. So I'm going to hit T for scale and just scale the overall thing. Let's get the proper width going. Now I've done that. Let's center it a little bit better. Now let's deal with the height. So I'm going to hit T for scale. Just grab the green arrow and pull that up. E, move it a little bit. Okay, better. Now I'm going to go to my polygon mode. I've already, well, I don't. Let's grab this inner ring. And is our perspective really messing us up here? It's hard to tell. That looks very even, like top and bottom. So now it's really, this doesn't move up or down, it just scales. But you see that the whole thing looks like we're off a little bit. So I'm actually going to go back to my polygon, or our object mode, model mode, and pull this down to there. Even though visually this looks different here and that looks different there, I think our perspective is starting to mess with us. So right there, that line and that line are starting to match pretty well. So I'm going to trust that more than this. It's just based on the perspective of this reference. Honestly, that's a big thing you have to deal with. Like when you're trying to model a car or a person or anything, there's always some perspective going on. You always have to fight against that. Like your side view and your front view, they don't perfectly match. They always end up making all these tiny little artistic decisions. But in any case, that should be the approximate shape of that. But then this turns into how do we take these bites out of it? There's actually a bunch of different ways we could probably tackle that. I can think of like 4 different approaches I might try and do to model that. And actually, I hate to do it, but I think the way I'm thinking right now might be even better than what I'm trying to tackle here. So you know what? Actually, what we just did is we created this nice model and we get this nice scale going. But I'm just going to use this as a way of biting out what will eventually become a clone that we're going to clone around this guy. So what I'm going to do is actually just grab this little sliver of what we made. And it's going to be really hard to tell. Like, it's not that fat. I'm really going to approximate this. We can even grow our selection one and maybe make it a little bigger. It's not that big, though. So maybe we'll just grab this one. Yeah, I'm going to invert my selection, and I'm going to hit delete. So now we've just got like this little piece left over. So we need this width to be correct. This might change some of the perspective, but it's going to be all right. I'm going to go to point mode. I'm going to select all of our points. I'm going to say optimize. I'm going to grab this point actually and this point. I want to see how wide that is on X. And it is 17.288. So I'm going to now grab this point and that point, as well as this point and this point. I'm going to paste that number into its X. And now it's going to make that just as wide. But this other part right here is still extruding outward a little bit. So it's going to give us a little bit of that curvature, which you see, I think, is still there. So that makes sense. And now we just need to close this polygon hole. So I'm going to hit MD, which is close polygon hole, which you can find under mesh. So I'm going to click on that, and you'll see that it's gonna look weird. In fact, it's gonna look like it didn't do anything. And that's because we're creating n-gons, and so you see I have one giant n-gon here, which is actually completely matching our geometry. Well, almost perfectly matching our geometry. I think that by selecting that n-gon, I can just hit K for the knife tool, and I can do a cut from here to here. And as weird as that looks, you'll see that I actually did successfully cut that n-gon. If I do the same thing here to here, then boom, now we cut that n-gon, and it actually gave it kind of more proper form. And just to make sure our intersections are correct, I'm going to turn off our cylinders, and I grab this back polygon. I'm going to layer D for extrude. I'm going to do an extrude of 0, and and I can hit enter. So we did an extrude of 0. The reason I did an extrude of 0, actually, let's do it wrong first. If I don't do an extrude of 0 and I start visually pulling this back, actually it doesn't seem to be doing a problem. It might be because it's an n-gon. I thought it was going to shrink as it went back in space, but because it's an n-gon, it averaged the two, and thus it didn't. Actually, to show you more accurately what it might have done, if we put a knife, if we knife that and now we get rid of the n-gon, now if I grab these two and hit D and extrude, you'll see it's doing what I thought it would do, which is pinching inward, which I don't think is what we want. And now in this case, I would hit D for extrude. Extrude of 0. It did extrude, but 0, and I can just pull it backwards. Awesome. So that gives us that one little sliver, that one little piece of geometry. There's a bunch of ways we could have tackled that, but this gives us kind of accurate curvature. So turn those cylinders back on again. Let's look at this reference here. You see that actually does get a tiny little bit wider there? And there's probably some nice little bevels in there. I don't know that we're going to worry about those, but bevels are super important. But in any case, I would make a cylinder. I want to position this right where this one is, so I'm actually going to put it there. If I hit Shift-C, PSR, I can automatically get the PSR. There's no shortcut for that, so doing Shift-C will pop up all the commands. PSR automatically finds reset PSR, and I could just hit Enter, and then that zeroes out the cylinder. Okay, cool. Cylinder is zeroed out. I can click on my little orange dot and scale this down. I guess that should be pretty much the exact scale of the other object we had. I'm going to kind of go back to eyeballing that a little bit and not worry too much. And let's just scale this in until it's just kind of got that little lip going around it. So excellent. Okay, cool. Yank that out. Grab this guy. We need a new cloner. I'm going to go to MoGraph. I'm going to make a cloner. I'm going to make it a child of our, little notch here, and then do the trick again. Shift-C, PSR, and that's going to zero that out. And I can yank it out and then put it into the cylinder. And now you see it's making a bunch of clones upward. We actually want to do a radial. Of course, a radial is always sideways, so we have to change that to flat on the ground, which is XZ plane. And that's going to do an array like that. We've got a radius of 50. I'm going to shrink that down to 0. And it's a radius of 0 because our axis is in the center. If our axis was, say, out here on the object, we'd have to give it some radius. But because it's not, that should work fine. So let's see how many of these we might have. 1, 2, 3, 4. There might be 7. There might be 8. It's hard to tell. I'm going to go ahead and just do 8. Maybe 7. Cool. So now we've got our nice little array going down there. Now, yeah, let's go all the way. Let's make the little ring here. It looks like the ring shoots straight through and is a perfect curve. And now that looks like it is through a hole in one of these. So now that we know that, why don't we, the quickest way to do this is just going to be use a boole, because first of all, it should be clean because we're passing through a single polygon. So yeah, we're definitely going to do that. I'm going to create a cylinder. Actually, we've already got a cylinder right in the correct location, so I'm going to copy this cylinder. I'm going to hold down Command, and I'll make a duplicate. And I can pull this one out. I'm going to change its orientation to be on Z+. I'm going to decrease its radius to be reasonable. Pull it out until it's right where we want it to be to get a hole. Scale it down some more. We don't actually want it passing through this geometry, so we got to make sure we pull this out properly. Looks pretty good. I'm not sure how big the radius should be. We'll keep the boole alive in case we have to change it. So that's all good. Now we should be able to just make a boole. I'm going to drag it down here so it's in the proper spot in the hierarchy. Grab both these guys, throw them in, and boom, that should automatically make the hole. Now that should have made us a very clean boole. Like we get all these lines, but they're all trapped within a single quad polygon, which means it should be clean. The fongs should be nice. Everything should be working perfectly well. So that should work for me. I'm curious. The ring does seem to go out. We might need fewer clones, but what's cool is we've got this all live, so we can still make that change. Let's see. Now we need to make the little ring. I'm going to make an arc, actually. And we know the arc needs to be down here, so I'm going to make it a child of the cylinder. Hit Shift-C, PSR. It's going to bring it down into this approximate range. And now we've got our arc. So I want our arc to do 180 degrees. So you see we get this nice half of a circle. I'm going to go ahead and just flip it downward. Holding down Shift so we get the nice snapping. Hit T for scale. Scale this down. And it looks like it's big enough to just barely get beyond the bottom of the shape, which should actually give us a pretty accurate scale there. So I'm going to hit T and scale it just so it's a little bit bigger. And now that we see kind of that's the scale it kind of has to be, and that's going to inform us about these other parts, but they actually don't seem like they're going to intersect. So that's all good. Now I should be able to take this guy, yank it out, make it editable, and just say close spline, and it's going to link those together. And actually, I think we could maybe not make that editable, and always don't make it editable if you don't have to. If we change it to, what is it, sector. Oh, I can turn it to a sector, and that will actually automatically close it. So that's great. That's a circle that we're going to be sweeping. So let's create a nice sweep. And we got our circle, we got our arc, drop them both in the sweep. It's going to be way too big, of course. So I'm going to grab our circle, hit T for scale, go make it nice and tiny. Small enough to fit in the hole there. And even there, now you can see like this ring is already starting to look a little bit fat. So I'm going to T for scale and scale it down to the point where it looks about right, which is relatively skinny. And then you'll see we actually have a lot of segments here. Like if you care about poly count, you know, if you don't care about poly count, then whatever. But there's a lot of polygons there, so we could go to our angle per se, let's say, and change angle to like 10. Now you see we get a more reasonable poly count. And that's so tiny that we don't need all those polygons wasted on it. Now we get this really hard arc right here. And there's no way to get around that unless we were to make this editable. And like that is not a hard arc. It calls a lot of attention to itself. That's not the way you would machine something. So I am going to go ahead and take our arc, make it editable, and I'm going to grab this point, which I know is right there in the center of the pipe, this point, which I know is right in the center of that pipe. Or you can, of course, turn off your sweep and I can visually see them. I'm going to right-click and go to chamfer, and then we can start dragging that out, and that's going to give us a nice arc right there. Now, I actually want to see that in context, so I'm going to turn the sweep back on and start dragging this out. And you'll see that we have to pull it out decently far before it doesn't start pinching itself. In fact, even there, it still was pinching itself. So I'm going to pull it out, out. And we have to get all the way to that point before we have intersecting polygons. That could be good. That could be, I mean, it depends if visually that looks correct. It's actually not too bad. We are getting this weird little pinch there. I'm kind of curious what's causing that. It looks like it's because of this arc and the way it's twisting out, which is surprising. I wasn't expecting that. It does bug me. We're being pretty careful with this. So why don't we go ahead and fix that? I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to eyeball them. But if we just rotate that in a little, it should kind of get rid of that. And we have to, of course, do it on the other side. You see that little kind of oink? So we have to grab that and just rotate it until it looks a little straighter. Good enough. With it being real sharp, it would bug me. But now it should be smooth enough where it doesn't bug me. Cool. Now we get our arc. Now you see that our hole is way too big, which is why it's great that our Boole is still large. I can shrink that hole until it's not so big. In fact, I mean, that could just straight up pass through it and you wouldn't even care. Like we could just say, oh, look, there's no Boole going on, no hole. And now it just passes through and it's like, cool, whatever. But, you know, if you want the hole, then we have our Boole. Okay, cool. So now, geometry-wise, the only thing that's left is our button, I think, and then possibly some bevels. You know, I'm kind of glad that we ended up going back with this simpler object. If we were trying to tackle some of these other things, like we've already been talking for almost 35 minutes just on this model. So, you know, this is probably good we dialed it back. Look at this weird little handle there. I never noticed that before. I always thought, like, on all the toys, there isn't this little wing, and that might be how he flips it on and off. Like, on all the toys, you always just pull this up and down. I'm not sure what that is. It's even hard to tell at this angle what it is. There's a bunch of little details in here that until you get the higher res one, you can't tell. Look, there's a hole there. There's a hole here. There's a little slit right in there. There's a little peg in here. We get this little bolt here, which you can only see from certain angles. I don't know what that is, or even where it is. It's just kind of stuck on there on the side. Oh, and look at that. There's a sliver in here, and this is supposed to be the master replica, so I would trust this one more so. So look, you see that little slit in there? Look at these little holes in there. Like, look at all these details you wouldn't, until you get a nice high-res one, you wouldn't even know. Let's say we want to fix that little slit in there. We know it's right there. It's right there in the center. Let's go back to our side view. You'll see from our lower resolution image, we didn't even know. We didn't know that there was a hole in there. Or maybe in this particular reference, that they didn't add it in. And that's why it'd be very dangerous in general to look at somebody else's, say, 3D reference. Those master replicas are like super professional Star Wars fans trying to make it as detailed as possible. But if you look at a 3D render that someone else did of that, and then they forgot a detail, that means you're going to forget the detail, and you're constantly going to be degrading the quality. But anyway, let's try and just fix this one part. I'm going to go to my model mode. I'm going to click on this model. I'm going to go to... there's a lot of different ways we could do this, but I'm going to go to my edge mode. I'm going to hit UB for ring selection. I'm going to hit MF for edge cut. I'm going to hit apply. I'm going to increase my subdivision. I'm going to turn off end gun. And now you see that gives us nice 2 even cuts, which are perfectly centered. And what that means is we can now do a loop selection. Hit T for scale, scale it down, hit D for extrude, and do a nice clean extrude in. Just a little one right there. So just a quick, clean way of adding in that little bit of extra geometry there now that we looked at some higher quality reference. Let's throw a button on here and get into texturing. Otherwise, we won't have any time to do that. So I'd love to go and put like all that little micro detail on there, but we just don't have time. So what's cool is that this reference we have does have the button here. Look at these little colors. Those are interesting. Like that's like on and off, which is making me think there's some sort of toy that's giving you feedback if it's supposed to be on or off. I don't see those color arrows here or here. We're actually seeing both sides. So on this master replica, that's not a thing. We actually have this little toggle switch, whatever that does. And look at these weird little metal pieces down there. Like, I don't know, lots of stuff. Let's just assume that the ratio is correct on this. I'm going to just make a box. I'm going to go back to my model mode and then go to move, even though I could have been doing that already. Or it would have worked anyway. Let's shrink our box down. Shrink it down on Z. It's just going to intersect both top and bottom, maybe a little less on the top. And of course, it's really wide, so we have to go here. I'm just going to eyeball this and guess, let's say, about that. That actually looks huge, how far it's sticking out, which is kind of crazy. Makes me... I mean, the skinnier we get, the less big it is, but that is eating a ton of screen space there. It's making me think that's a little big based off this reference rather than this reference. Like, this profile doesn't seem nearly as eating up as much space. Whatever. Anyway, we got to go do this. What do we get? We get these little... It's kind of hard to judge exactly what we're looking at here. If I had to guess, what I think we're actually looking at there is, I'm going to copy this cube actually. I love doing this. I'm going to save this file, which we haven't done. Dangerous thing to do. And let's just call it Luke's Lightsaber. I'm going to copy this cube, new file, paste it, and then even zero it out, reset PSR. And now I'm working on a new file just on this part. We can zoom in, focus on this, and then we can put it back in the other file when we need to. So here's what I'm guessing. I'm going to copy and paste that cube. I'm going to shrink it down. I'm going to pull it down here. Now what I'm thinking is that that's actually like a little wedge like this. And then we get those little like C-shaped clamps on the edge. I'm just going to do it as a means of explaining. I'm actually going to copy and paste this cube again, make this one editable. We can actually model both sides at the same time. I'm going to do a loop selection right here. Delete. Select this polygon. Hit... let's hit D for extrude. We could create caps on there. Why not? Let's go ahead and create caps. I'm going to go very carefully select a bunch of polygons. I'm going to select that one, this one, and this one. I'm going to D for extrude. First thing I want to do is make sure I turn off create caps. Okay, cool. Those are off. That extrudes outward. And now I want to very carefully select that polygon, that polygon, that polygon, that polygon. Hit D for extrude again. Drag that out a little bit. And we get like these little C-shaped clamps. Now, all that extra effort we just put in there could be completely useless unless we were to do something like a bevel. And I am planning on throwing a big giant bevel on everything when we're done. For now, if we wanted to see that get distinguished a little bit, we could maybe just shrink this down a little, just a little extra detail. These things start getting layered up on top of each other. Like this cube, we could copy and paste this, and then this one could This one could maybe shrink in a little bit and then pull up a little bit. Now that can come up and touch that. A little extra detail in there, like maybe realistic, maybe not. Like we don't have a high enough, unless we were physically holding the model of a lightsaber, we wouldn't be sure about those details. The last thing we'd probably do is these little pieces of what looks like copper, maybe some sort of zinc or something. Just because we can, why don't we go ahead and make that a cloner? I'm going to make a copy of this guy, shrink it down, make a MoGraph cloner. Whenever we're doing something that's supposed to be kind of centered like this, I always like putting it onto grid array and then just putting some Y segments on it. And what's great about that is that means we're centered. So we could do a linear one to start at the bottom and go up, and now we know we're centered perfectly, and that means I can drag these in, and now we would count them. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we got 8 of those guys. Make 8 clones. You'll see that instead of like changing the different positions and whatnot, like we know that that is perfectly distant, same distance as it is down from the bottom. And that's why I like doing that. Cool. I'm actually going to shrink it down a little bit. Maybe even sink it back in a little bit. But yeah, that just kind of makes that shape. Is there anything else we want to worry about on this handle? I mean, we got that nice little bite taken out, but we've got this weird little wing thing. No idea what that is. Makes me want to look into it. But we got about 15 minutes left, so we might have to just call it on that and start doing some texturing. I'd love to even do a little bit of stuff on making the glowing blade. Let's go ahead and I'm going to group just that one cube, and I did that because it centered it at 0. And we'll throw everything else in here. We'll just call this button. Copy, copy, copy. Go back to our file here. Paste. It's going to be in the wrong spot, but I can just drag this into our other cube. Shift-C, PSR, zeroes it out, and pops right back where it was. And now we're back in the scene, and everything's working proper. Very nice. Cool. Now, we are having that nice 40% off Greyscalegorilla thing going on this week, so let's use some Greyscalegorilla products. Before we do any texturing, let's see what this is going to look like lit up in a good environment. So I'm actually going to create a null, select everything, make it a child null, so now we got that one thing grouped. I'm going to make just a blank material and throw it on here, just so we get kind of a white. It's actually not white, it's a little bit gray, but close enough. Now I can go ahead and throw in an HDRI Studio. Actually, we can go straight to the browser and then put it in some sort of... I almost want to stay in one of these studios. It's going to be a little bit more like Star Wars isn't out in the daylight. It's inside of a Death Star with all this weird artificial lighting. Let's try this one. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and just pull this guy up above the floor. Let's even... I guess we'll just pick the camera angle a little different. Is our ring... I'm curious if the ring is here. Yeah, everything's all angled. I always build things symmetrically, but you see that the ring is at like a weird 45 or 30 degree angle as compared to the button. Just an interesting detail. Our button is actually off to the side. What we could do is grab this button, go to our axis. I'm going to zero out our axis. By being on the axis tool, I can zero out it on Z. It jumps in the center. Now I can turn off the axis tool, and now I can just start rotating that guy to whatever angle I want. It should be pretty much perfect. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw that guy into somewhat arbitrary angle here just to, I guess, match it a little bit better. The last thing I'd want to do is probably that nice bevel I was talking about. I'm a little worried about some of the modeling we did up here where these things aren't necessarily connecting. That might mess up the bevel, but the bevels are really going to catch some highlights nicely. So what I'm going to do is do another grouping. I'm actually going to grab everything and group it, which is Alt-G. And I'm going to yank out everything I don't want the new bevel to affect. So I don't want the bevel to affect the button. And I don't want the bevel to affect our ring. Cool. That should all be working pretty well. So now you can see that all this stuff that I just turned off, that's what's going to be affected by this new bevel. So things might need to be connected. I don't know. Let's just see what happens. I'm going to make a parametric bevel. Let's go ahead and just throw this in here. I'm going to hit save real quick before I throw it in because you never know. Throw it into this null. Okay, it's nice and quick. So we're getting tons and tons of bevels, but now all we have to do is turn on use angle. And even its default of 40 usually works pretty well. You'll see that we're getting a nice bevel there. We're getting some bevels here. We're getting bevels here. We might be getting bevels we don't necessarily want, but we get nice bevels here. Like everything's actually getting beveled quite nicely. So I'm not going to complain about that. I'd actually love to get some bevels on the lightsaber handles here as well, but you see that we're not getting them because they are not welded together. So we could make them editable, or I could just grab all of those, and I'm going to hold down, was it Alt? And make, nope, didn't work. Maybe it's Shift. Actually, maybe it doesn't work with multiple objects. Anyway, I'm going to make a connect object, which is both a virtual parametric make editable and weld, and I guess in our case optimize. So we can throw this in here, and this weld is actually optimizing all those points, welds them together, and now we get the bevel on those as well. Excellent. Excellent, excellent. Cool, now we got our general model here. It's looking good. Quite happy with it. Let's get some textures and lighting going. So we've got our HDRI Studio. We've got the floor. I'm going to go ahead and hit Insert Render Settings so we don't have to worry about those. I'm immediately going to turn on GI Medium. It's my kind of go-to. Let's just hit Render and see what we get. So, of course, we're going to be a little bit grainy, but you can see that we're lighting this thing up. This is entirely based off of just this HDR. Not too bad. I guess we're going to be taking a little bit of a render hit if we're lighting this with GI. We could just use that for reflection. That's a tough call, but I think it'll look better with reflectance if we're using this, and we're actually lighting it via the same thing. But I don't know, maybe this lighting is a little too even. Like, I mean, I guess we would get very even lighting based on that studio. So we could do something like this ring light, do another quick render here. And this should, I missed the render button. We should get more directional lighting, and immediately you see this is a lot brighter over on this end. It's just making me like it a lot more overall, so we'll leave it at that for now. So yeah, why don't we jump on into top coat? Somebody in the chat called it top coat time, and it is totally top coat time. So now we've got this. It's going to be hopefully catching some reflections. Ooh, the one thing... Actually, now that I think about it, I kind of do want this button to get bevels. I'm going to go ahead and just make a copy of the bevel so we can put a different amount in there. So I actually want a very tiny bevel because that's tiny detail. So let's do a 0.5. 0.5 is pretty good. Not too bad. But this is doing Fong. I don't like the way that it's doing the Fong. So I'm actually going to grab all the Fong tags, all these Fong tags. I'm going to drop that down to 22. And you'll see that's going to give us a sharp Fong again. I don't like when it's that soft thing because it's not realistic. It's trying to smooth this polygon out to that polygon. It's kind of like doing a hyper or doing a subdivision surface without doing a subdivision surface. Anyway, top coat. We've got all of our different objects. Let's go ahead and start making some materials. So we go plugins, top coat. And first thing we need, I guess, is our... We're not going to make this messy one, but let's make this nice, or maybe we could, I don't know, we'll see. Let's just get this nice metal. Now, there is definitely some machining going on here. We can't do that, but let's just get a nice chrome to start out with. So we've got chrome. In fact, we made that material, but I'm going to say turn off color channel. So now we just have our top coat. Oop, I guess I got to select it. Turn off color channel. Now we just have our reflectance channel, which is nice and chrome. In fact, that's not even true itself. I should have started the material from scratch, which is what I'm going to do. If I deselect it, I can make a new material completely from scratch. Otherwise, I have to turn off the color channel. I have to turn off the specular that's created by default, and top coat can do all those things. But if we just start from scratch, now I didn't have to do those. I'm actually going to scoot this guy over a little bit, and we're going to open up this page. And I want to just put it off to the side. Even this one right here is going to give us pretty good reference as to what we're aiming for and what these should be applied to. So I'm going to make the chrome on lots of these objects. In fact, the chrome is on most of the objects. So what I could do is just apply this to the overall object, and now we'll just put the exceptions on everything else. So we can make, let's make like a nice black plastic. And once again, I should probably just make it from scratch from top coat. So in top coat, we can just make a nice, I mean, this is going to be Luke's new shiny lightsaber. So we can just make it a nice gloss. So nice new gloss material there. And this one, I'm going to turn off texture so we can see all of our color. I'm going to apply this gloss directly to this box. It should be applied there. Of course, we're not going to visually see the textures, but that's fine. So we know that's what we want there. It looks like this is black as well. I'm just going to go ahead and, Actually, it doesn't look shiny, and that's kind of what we're doing. So why don't we make a duplicate of this gloss material, copy and paste it, and I'm just going to pull this gloss way back so it's nowhere near as shiny, but there's still a little something. I'm going to drag that and apply to that object right there. Let's deselect everything, make a new material again. Let's make this metal. It's hard to judge exactly what it's doing. I'm going to say dull, and we can go to metals, and we can just kind of be like, which one of these is closest? Let's go with titanium. Looks pretty good. We're going to get this nice titanium. Boom, automatically done. I'm not going to change anything else. Let's apply that to these. Everything else is silver there, so that's all good. Everything seems to be silver there. Now all we have to do is get over to these guys. So I think we do have to do a selection tag here because there's 2 different types of material. So I'm going to go ahead and do a loop here. And now we grab that loop, and that is going to end up being, that's the silver part. So I'm actually going to invert this. I'm going to invert my selection. If I turn off my clone, you can see what I did. So I've grabbed that selection, and I'm going to say set selection. Oop, I misclicked. Set selection. Cool. Now I've got that set selection. I'm going to go and just name this black. The reason I'm doing this is, here's something that's really cool. The selection tag based stuff actually filters down through the hierarchy. So this is a nice shiny black. I think it's the same as this. So we're going to use our nice gloss here. I'm going to go ahead and throw this on the overall null. But you'll see if we throw that on the overall null, if I were to hit render, it's going to be overriding everything. Everything is that black material now. So what we can do instead, and it looks cool, but it is all black. What we can do is say this black material should only be applied to black. That actually filters down. So this is saying, hey, everything be chrome. And this is saying, hey, if you have a tag that says black, be black. So it actually filters all the way down. So now we don't have to texture that separately. Just to show you, let's go ahead and hit render. And now we get that nice chrome going on all the stuff, super chrome, and then black on those bits. Exactly what we were aiming for. Cool. Anything else? I know we have that. It's very, very, very messy here. But if we go to this one, you see we get this. I don't know. That's a little This one's definitely a lot cartoonier. But I kind of like that standing out a little more. So why don't we try and make something like that material? Let's just do it from scratch. I'm going to go to plugins, top coat. It's quite dull, so we'll start from dull again. Maybe even a little extra dull than that. So I'm going to add a little more blur. Yeah, that's fine. And then let's go to metals, and then I mean, we could go tin, but I'm thinking copper. Let's click copper. Copper, maybe it's not copper, but copper is my favorite metal, so I'm going to click copper. And now this is just going to get applied directly to that object. So I'm going to just visually grab it and then drop it on that one. And then actually, this shows it's on those edges, so let's do that as well. I'm going to grab those. Those are both one object, so I can do that. You can also right-click on a material and say apply, so that works. Cool. So actually, as far as a lightsaber is concerned, unless we're going to start messing things up, that should work pretty well. Pretty well indeed. I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and let's do a quick render and see what we're dealing with. Ooh, shiny lightsaber. Not too bad. Not too bad. Now, this whole thing we actually made chrome. This is obviously not chrome. So let's go back into that, and let's just do some modifiers on it. In fact, I'm going to click on that. I'm going to go to top coat. I keep closing it, but Nico's docks it, I know. But I'm going to say that you're going to have a little bit of blur. Not too much, just a little. And actually, that could be fine. Let's try that. Nice. I like this bit of blur. You can see really well right there. It's really bringing out the highlights here. Yeah, this is just not quite as perfect to there. Depends on what section of the scene it's reflecting, but it's all looking pretty good. I like it. So, what is next? Well, I'm trying to think if there's anything we're missing. Before we just jump into maybe getting a nice glow going on here. Let's just go right to our lightsaber glow. I'm going to save this. I'm going to go to our studio, and we might turn it back on, but I'm going to turn off our floor and our background, just so we're kind of on darkness here. And now we can really focus on the glow. So there's actually a series of different ways we can do this. Now, when you actually look at a lightsaber blade, where's my original search? Just had to do it again. I'm just going to search lightsaber. Thank you, autofill. Lightsaber images. I'm going to search a large one again. And let's try and find something that seems somewhat realistic for the movie. Okay. Yeah, Darth Maul. Here's a nice high res. Now, something I don't like is in the new movies they went and made them tapered and curved. I don't think in the original they were, so we're not going to taper ours. But this is giving us that glow really nicely, and that is what we want. So you'll see that these are actually quite bright, the center beam, and it's also solid. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to, we'll make a capsule, but we won't taper it. So I'm going to make a capsule. We're going to make it a lot skinnier, and we're going to make it way taller. And I'm not sure how big these should be. Let's just eyeball it. Let's go ahead and do that. Actually, not too bad. T for scale it up a little bit, and I'm going to move it up so we're just intersecting so we can hide that bit of geometry. Cool. Okay, so now let's go ahead and make a new material. We'll go ahead and call this the blade for our laser sword. No reflectance, no color, yes, luminance. And now I think we just need a tiny Fresnel, actually. So we got our Fresnel, but we want the inside to be white, and we want the outside to be, I guess this is Luke's second lightsaber, so we got to make it green. So that's going to fade out to that. And actually, I guess the inside isn't white, but it should be pretty close to it. So it's going to fade out like that, and now we can apply this. Now, we could technically use a glow. That looks pretty good. We could use a glow on this, and how rare would you actually use glows in real renders? I'm going to hit render. Problem with, and it's not bad. Like, it gives us a little bit of a glow, but you don't have very good fall off. You don't have very good control. So let's not do it with a glow. Let's do it with a light. So we'll keep it simple. I'm going to create a light. It's facing Z, but let's go ahead and change it to be not an omni light, but a parallel spot. Yeah, let's do a parallel spotlight. And now we can rotate this. And we could have actually made the entire blade out of this, but you can't actually see through a lightsaber, so I think this might be a little better. So I'm going to scale this down. I'm going to grab this top dot and pull it way up. Let's go ahead and just hit, actually, I'm going to turn off our blade for a second. Let's just see what that gives us. I guess we should probably turn this into a no illumination visible light. So now we're going to visibly see it. Now you see I actually grabbed the wrong one of these and pull it. So we actually get this really nice fall off that we're automatically getting from that as well. And we can choose if we want that or not. In fact, we might make, I guarantee we'll be making multiple lights. So I pull this way up, and you'll see that we get this nice glow, but it's obviously not green. So first thing we need is a very green glow there. So, nice glow going on. But it's falling off a lot. So that's actually being controlled via our visibility, and we have two different fall-offs. We have a fall-off and an edge fall-off. So the edge fall-off is where it's kind of fading out on the edge, and that's set to 50. I'm actually going to set that to 100. And then we have our long way, like up the side fall-off. So what I actually think is it's kind of cool to have that fade off, like in this, maybe it's getting a little bit of the edge. We get more glow on the bottom and the top. I don't know if that's necessarily accurate, but what I would do is make two different lights, and now one of them we can give like a very tiny fall off, and the other has a big fall off. Now they should be kind of additive. We're going to get a lot of glow on one, and in fact, this whole thing could hit T for scale and scale the whole thing up a little. We could increase our radius on that, which I think is this one. Yeah, our outer radius. And we can start increasing that. We can get that bigger glow going on that one. We could turn this one off, and now you'll see we just have our... Actually, there's still a fall off on that. Did I do that wrong? No fall off. Render. Okay, well, now that traveled all the way up, but we get that hard edge up there. So I feel like we do want some fall off, but at 10%, you see we're still getting a very strong fall off. If I set that to 0, well, that's kind of curious. I'm not entirely sure what that setting does. It only goes from 0 to 100, but it's actually quite strong. Interesting. Not sure the best way to get around that. I guess what I would probably do is I don't even know if this will work, but let's give it a go. I'm gonna make this 1,000. No, let's make it 1,200 long. And now let's just say that's the bit we want to fall off. So I'm gonna say that this one. What happens if we do 0 fall off? So it's still falling off. So I'm going to say no fall off, and then it just cuts off hard. But now if we make a duplicate of this guy, and we're going to move it up plus 1,200, now it's exactly starting where that one ends. And now I'm going to say that this one does use maximum fall off, but it's only 500 long. So now we got 2 lights. I just want to see what that does. It might give us a weird thing there. Actually, that seemed to have worked. So now we can kind of individually control our fall off. Little goofy how we had to do that, but do what you got to do. So that's still falling off incredibly fast, which means this actually needs to move up significantly higher. So I'm going to move it up 250. Let's see how that fall off looks. Okay, too long. So I'm going to pull that back. But let's see what that looks like. Better. And let's see if this fall off actually does anything. Okay, you see that actually does do it. And that makes it actually nicely curved. So there's a fall off, but it's kind of weird how it curves inward. Interesting to note. I'm going to move this back down 100. Is that going to be too much? That's fine. I moved it, so now that means I've moved up about 150, or exactly 150. So I'm going to say plus 150, so those perfectly match up again. That's going to give us that fall off, so we get that we get that nice glow going. And I guess I'm going to kill this one off, but I'm going to grab our big one. And now I want, like, that's kind of our close glow. And now I'm going to make a significantly bigger one. So this one's going to get longer. And it's going to get wider. But it's going to be a lot less bright. So that's going to give us so still way too bright. Okay, I want to feel a little bit of an edge fall off. Of course, we're going to get that same problem up in the top. In fact, we might have to do that same process again. I'm going to copy both of these guys and increase our outer radius and way decrease our intensity. So it's going to give us a bigger outer glow. And you see this actually on our reference over here. It's actually glowing quite far out off to the side. So not too bad. Okay, I really do have a hard time limit I have to hit today. So real quick, it would just be something, you'd want this to be able to generate light. So I'd actually probably right click on this capsule and add a compositing tag. And in the compositing tag, I'd say don't cast shadow, don't receive shadow, but I think it can do everything else. Don't be seen by ambient occlusion. That would be weird. But I would make another light right here, and this light would be generating the light from the lightsaber. So we could do something. You'd probably want to do something like an area light, and you can change your area light to not be a rectangle but a line. And now you see we got a line. And I can actually rotate this guy like that. Grab this dot and pull it up. Make it approximately the length of the blade. Now the blade should be ignoring this light because it's ignoring all shadows, and that means we can turn on whatever kind of light on this we want. Let's go ahead and make it quite green. Let's actually turn off everything except for this. I guess that kind of makes sense. Let's make a sphere.